My name is Christy Busby, and you are about to listen to the next episode of my podcast called F.A.T.E, From Atheism to Enlightenment. So come on in, join me. We're going to talk about it all, from atheism to enlightenment. Alrighty, guys, here we go. Get ready, and welcome to your F.A.T.E. Welcome, everyone, to the next episode of F.A.T.E. How's everybody doing today? On today's show, I have Scott Flynn. He has a book out called Love Outpouring, Experiencing Ever-Present Happiness by Illuminating and Eliminating the Difference Between Who You Are and What You Have Mistaken Yourself to Be. It's going to be a fascinating topic, gang. Scott Flynn, welcome to your F.A.T.E, my friend. How you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being a part of the show. I really appreciate you taking the time to be here with me. I read your book. I thought it was super illuminating for sure. And I was behind some of the concepts of your book to begin with. But let's start from the beginning. I'd love to hear your journey, how you got here, how you brought yourself to write this book, and where did your personal spiritual journey begin?
I didn't seek the message. The message found me. If I was to look back, 10 or so years ago, I wasn't supposed to be here right now. I had no idea that I would have been in this message, written this book, fallen in love with a culture that I had no idea about before. And so it seems like in this world of non-duality, which is what we're talking about here today, there's two reasons somebody would fall in love with this and engage themselves in this topic. One is just you're a truth seeker. You want to know the truth. You're just out in the world seeking to know the answer of life. And the other one is, which is why most people are here, because it's some sort of suffering in their life has made them realize that nothing else or nothing in the world can fix their problem, only falling back into their self, surrendering to their self. So these two paths both lead to the same place, and that place is yourself.
Were you not a victim of the trauma and the suffering? You were more, it happened organically. It happened a natural pull, a natural destination for you with these concepts, with dipping yourself in this spiritual world that you're speaking of?
No, I'm here because of
Oh,
suffering.
you're here because
I fall into the larger bucket. Now, when I look
Yes.
deeper, we're all seeking the
Yes.
truth in everything we do in our life. And the truth is happiness. We all want to be happy. But what happened is that in 2008 in the housing crash, value evaporated because I was a home builder. And so value evaporated and how I like to describe it, it's like it tore the fabric of my understanding of reality, of life, on how things are supposed to work. And that ripping just sent me into a tailspin of, at the time, was depression, because out of it, there was financial loss happening, there was shame, there was guilt, there was confusion, and I didn't know how to handle that. So my psyche just went into the abyss. And I found myself in a place of darkness, of hopelessness that I never in my wildest dreams could believe existed, like a person could go there. And so it, uh, being the guy that I am, and we're all this, we all want to dig ourselves out of it and come back out of that hole to have a quality life. And I just went on a 15 plus year journey to try to be happy. And I tried everything. This is where, you know, transcendental meditation, meditation came into my life, mindfulness. Let me clear my throat here. I did talk therapy. I was, doing pharmaceuticals from my neurologist. I microdosed psilocybin. I read Michael Pollan's book, How to Change Your Mind, and found somebody that would hold space for me to do a large dose of LSD. I did everything. And it appeared to work temporarily, but it never got underneath the root of the problem.
I find that to be fascinating, and I can so identify with everything you said. I've been on a similar path of having trauma. Mine was health related, being so dark that I've never thought I could ever dig myself out of a hole. And I was an
Huh?
atheist, so I had no spiritual knowledge, no God that I was seeking to help me, nothing. But I did start
Mhm.
doing things like um, energy healing, um, ayahuasca journeys, same kind of, and I don't know what part of the journey I am. I'm still in the beginning, I think. I'm certainly not 15 years in like you are. So maybe this is, synchronicity. Maybe this is my path that I'm going to get
Mm.
to eventually. But I have definitely been doing everything. When you were like listing everything you've done, I'm like, oh, yep, did that. Yep, did that. Yep. It's
Yeah.
interesting that when we get into a traumatic experience that rips everything away from who we think we are, that we go through very similar, and not everybody, some people could maybe take the other road and get into drugs or go further down the spiral seeking to free themselves from that pain in a different way that is never going to get you there. Or you can get to a place where you can start seeking truth and what are we doing here?
Okay.
What is the nature of reality? Who am I? All of those very important questions.
Yeah.
And, we're all on the journey together, Scott. Here we are.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the principles behind love outpouring and their origins. You speak of non-duality. Why don't we talk about what you mean by that so people understand the nature of what we're talking about?
Yeah. So about 8 years ago in this journey, somebody along the way who was an acquaintance at the time, who's now a really good friend, put a non-duality book in my hands and said, I think you might be interested in this. This might be what you're after. And at the time I read it, I'm like, I have no idea what this book is saying. I am surprised I even finished it. But there was something within me that knew that it was really important. Whatever it was important, and I needed to continue down this path. And so, yeah, it led me into this realm of non-duality, which is a subject that is basically non-existent in the States, in the West, you could say. And non-duality is the English word for the Eastern philosophy of Advaita Vedanta. Okay, where Advaita literally means not two. So non-dual and Advaita are the same word. And then Vedanta is actually a body of knowledge at the end of the Vedas. And so we would call that a philosophy, but to the Indians, it is a way of life, a way of being. It's not a thing. It's not a body of man-made knowledge. It's a way. And this way, the Indians say, is pointing to a one reality. It means that there's one substance here that's creating all of the apparent multiplicity. And that one substance is awareness. And because you're aware, I'm aware, all 8 billion of us are aware, we somehow have this one substance within us. And theoretically, everything we know has to be that one substance as well. And this one substance of awareness we call self or ourself. That's what makes it so like intimate. Like we are aware and we cannot deny that we are aware. You know, this is where it starts to get really, really profound, because when you ask yourself, tell me a time when you haven't been aware,
Right.
you can't, because everything that you know, you have to be aware that you know that. Right? So you can start to walk through everything like, well, I'm aware in the waking state, right? We're aware right now. I'm aware in the
Yep.
dream state because I'm aware I have dreams. I'm aware in the sleeping state. People say, what do you mean I'm asleep? Well, what is aware that you had a good night's sleep or a bad night's sleep? What was aware of the alarm clock when it went off? What was aware that there was a gap between sleeping or a dreaming and wakefulness, right? There's a blackout. There's something there. That is the awareness that knows you're asleep. We can continue to take this deeper with like near-death
Mm.
experiences, right? People give these beautiful, you know, just I went to heaven. I saw God in these beautiful realms. Yes. What was aware of
Right.
that? You know, psychedelic trips, you get blown into the cosmos, you get
We-
whipped around, you see God, you are the light, you are God. Well, what's aware of that?
Right.
Right? So this starts to get really profound. Like it is the one substance that's here.
I'm glad that you said when you first got a non-duality book and you put it in your hand and you said, I had a hard time wrapping my head and understanding it, because it
Mhm.
is so intriguing. And I read the book. It's hard to wrap your head around it. I found myself rereading sentences over and over
Mhm.
again to try and understand exactly
Mhm.
what you were meaning, you know? It's not it requires you to really almost put on a different lens on your eyeballs and think about um who you are versus your ego is a different it's a hard concept to
Mhm.
try and get around. So, why don't we
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that aspect of who we are, our ego and ourself, and how we can differentiate between the two, and
Right.
how the ego prevents us from really knowing what we are.
Yeah, I would say with what I'm about ready to say, when you're equipped with this knowledge, like you'll understand how it all works. So there's this spurious entity that arises out of self. So out of this one substance of awareness, this spurious entity we call an ego. And it It's arises out of you. So it's tethered back to you. So there's always a string home to yourself, a leash back home, you could say. But because the ego has risen out of wholeness, it itself is this sense of lack. So this contraction in us, we feel this contracted sense of person in here somewhere, right? And in this contracted sense of lack, we then are out in the world trying to find happiness. So we're out feverishly running around this world our whole life, looking to fill this sense of lack, when all we need to do is turn our attention back onto the wholeness in which that spurious illusion of an ego rose from. And that would solve all of our separation and suffering problems.
There's no shortage of those in the world.
Yes.
I mean, it's almost an existential threat at this point. People are feeling, I can't remember a time that I've been alive where there hasn't been this amount of people feeling despair, people feeling depression, mental
Mhm.
unwellness, overall dissatisfaction with their lives, um, filling ourselves up with material wealth, filling ourselves up with shopping, drinking, antidepressants,
Yep.
drugs. There's just a wealth of dystopian feelings in our consciousness, I feel, at this point
Yep.
in our
Yeah.
existence. I don't know what the solve is, but I certainly believe that if people truly did understand what and who we are, that we could revolutionize, transform our society in the way it functions, the way we treat each other, the way we treat the environment, the way we treat other species. It could revamp and rethink everything. It could be our one
Yes.
and only hope at this point, truly. You talk a little bit about in the book, matter first reality versus conscious first reality. Can you explain those two concepts and how they're different and what shifting from one to the other one would mean for your belief system?
We, when I say we, 95% of the world believes, we've been taught that about 13.8 billion years ago, there was a massive event that happened called the Big Bang. And out of that Big Bang, matter arose. So out of nothing, all of the matter in the universe arose. And over billions of years, it consolidated and solidified. And a few billion years ago, the Earth became the Earth and became habitable enough for us to live here. And we crawled out of the ooze and we stood upright and created a brain. And out of that brain rose consciousness. And with that body and consciousness is what has created the world as we know it and all of society. That is our mainstream basis of reality. Where it gets perplexing is that this is not the findings of quantum physicists. This is not the findings of neuroscientists or psychologists. When you ask the physicists how this isn't plausible, well, when they go to look for matter, they realize that whatever they're looking at isn't it in a standalone form. That whatever it is they're looking at has an underlying reality that gives it its reality. So then they say, all right, well, what's this then? Well, it's not this. it's borrowing its reality for the other underlying substance. So a quick example, take a tree or wood. Wood has an underlying reality of carbohydrates. So carbohydrates gives wood its reality. What's the underlying reality of carbohydrates? Well, it's carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. And you can keep just working down. Then you get to the atom. Then you go subatomic down into, you know, um,
I
bosons, and
I
it just
remember
goes
that
boom.
example in the book, and when you were going down, like, because I have a degree in science. My degree's in animal behavior and neurobiology, and once you started getting under
Uh-huh.
into bosons and stuff like that, I was like, I didn't even hear any of these scientific particles. It's been a long time, but I had not even heard of them. I'm sure they're based on quantum mechanics, which is not something I'm proficient in,
Oh, yeah.
but I had never heard of some of they got those tiny details of what it's broken down
Yeah.
to. So that was fascinating to me. I loved that example.
They're trying to find the source of
Yeah.
matter is what they're trying to do. And then it gets down into dark energy and then dark matter and then dark energy. And dark energy is just this infinite potential of energy, you could say. They say it's like a two-dimensional soup of infinite potential. And that's where everything arises out of that. So when we look onto the world, the matter isn't matter. You know,
Yes.
neuroscientists, when they look for an ego, they've never isolated an ego. They can't find it. They say that it's, electronic, firing of energy within your brain, these nodes that turn off and on. And I'm not something that turns
Mm-mm.
off and on. I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
permanent,
Yep.
right? So that means they haven't found your ego. So they haven't found matter, which is your
Yeah.
body. They haven't found your ego, which is your mind. And then the psychologists have this super hard problem they haven't solved called the hard problem of
Yes.
consciousness, where they can't figure out, they've got no probable explanations on how consciousness arises out of matter. It's because matter isn't what they think
Yes.
it is. I mean, it gets really, the whole thing starts to break
Yes.
down.
It does.
And then you're like, well, what is here? Oh, maybe the Indians were right. Maybe there is consciousness here. There is awareness here.
Yep.
That that has to be it. That is what we're looking for, which then a new model needs to be built out of what we absolutely know, which is awareness. And that's where the consciousness first model comes into play.
Do you feel like that is a model in which they would even allow us to? I'm just wondering at some point in the game, quantum mechanics and the scientists have been really starting to discover a lot about the nature of what our reality is. It doesn't seem to be penetrating mainstream science as far as what we are taught. And many people are not aware of these principles unless you're dancing in this kind of niche spirituality, you know, things. Most people are not taught about quantum mechanics, dark energy, or any of this. I kind of feel like if we were to start really embracing these concepts and understanding what and who we are, we would literally have to change a lot of things about our society. And I feel like there is a train that's on the tracks that they would like to keep moving in this direction regardless. And I would like us to start seeing our species in general start to evolve past what we now see ourselves as, which is matter, which is mechanical almost. Um, sure, people have religion, but even religion is very based in fear, in judgment, in not love. I don't see organized religion based in a whole lot of love. I feel like it's based in fear model. If you do this, you're going to go to hell. If you um, you know, you have to listen to your church elders, your priest, your whatever, instead of looking within and understanding your true nature of what and who you are? Like, what do you feel like the long term of getting a book like this out could really do to change our society and how people interact and feel about themselves, the planet, and everyone else?
So this message isn't about a person having a better
Okay.
life. This is about experiencing eternal peace. Because to a person, an ego, it wants the world to change so that it has a better life. So it wants the world to, as it's striving to work, have all the lights be green. It wants to get to work and have a raise without even know it's coming. It wants to get the phone call that their son or daughter just got another A on their test. This is it wants this perfect life to happen for it. What this is saying is that when you change how you experience yourself, then the perception of the world changes. So when you experience peace, regardless of what the world is doing, you experience that from a peaceful place. Because we can't change the world. We can only change how we perceive the world.
Good point.
See that
Yes.
difference there? The world is going to be the world.
Yes. Good.
It's how we perceive the world and experience it.
How do you feel about the concept of, you know, we actually create our own reality as far as manifesting what we experience here? How does that relate, or does it, to non-duality concepts? Is that something that is aligned?
So non-duality is a little bit more
Okay.
radical because it's saying that when you come home and rest in yourself, there is no person there.
Interesting.
Self is infinite. A person is finite. So they don't line up. You can't have them simultaneously happen. That's what an ego wants out of this. It wants to be the doer of infinite love. It wants to know infinite love, but it can't. It's like the moth before the flame.
Right.
To experience the true beauty and infiniteness of self, the ego has to perish in that. And then all that remains is unconditional love and acceptance. So that is, to use your word, reality. You're coming in line with reality. As ego dissolves into self, you're coming in line with reality as reality is manifesting.
That's a lot to wrap your head around. Whew. Oh,
Yes, and nobody does reality.
right.
It's see this again. This is to your earlier point. This is the conflict in society, like why we don't want to
Yeah.
go there, because we're so attached to our identity that who would we be without our identities?
I have been starting to let go of pieces of that through my own meditation practices and learning about spiritual concepts. And this is going to help me on my path as well, of letting go of, like, I am not my job. I am not, um, I am not, a daughter. I am something
Ooh.
other than these categories.
Way
Yeah.
greater than
Yeah,
those.
these categories that you put
Right.
yourselves in, that people become very attached to their identity and truly have a hard time letting go. But I am
No.
working on those aspects. The ego is very powerful, and we are,
Yes.
I think, run by our egos in a lot of ways. We're not even conscious of it because we are just used to um bowing down to it in a way, giving into it, allowing it to lead us in whatever direction it wants to in the moment. And I think most of us aren't even conscious of our egos whatsoever. Um, why don't we talk a little bit about some of the practices people can do to notice the difference and start chipping away at their ability for that ego to overtake them in their daily lives?
Yeah. I like to bring in some hand puppets on this to get some
I love that.
visualization.
I
So so this is the ego's life. We're going to say the ego resides in here. This is and the ego's constantly looking out onto the world. It's an outward projection. And every single thing in its life comes back to itself. So I am a man or a woman. I am a father. I am a husband. I am a son. I own a house. I wrote a book. I am an author. I have pain in my left arm. I, 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 I. There's nothing in your life that doesn't have this thing at the center of it. Okay, so what this message is saying is that we're not denying anything in our life. What we're saying at the beginning at least is we're not interested in anything that's happening in our life. We just let it be. This message is about learning how to let everything be as it is. So we just let our life be as it is. What differs here is that instead of having our attention out into our life, we're turning that attention back onto the I and we're questioning it. All we're concerned about is this. Who is this I that believes he's a father? Who is this I that owns a house? Who is this I that's experiencing pain in his left arm? And so what this does, it starts to question the one we think we are, or the one we've mistaken ourselves to be. And when the more we turn our attention on it to scrutinize it and analyze it, investigate into it, the more we realize directly, and this is the main point, the ego realizes that it is non-existent. This is where it gets profound. The ego, has to see that itself is not real. And it's in that direct experience that then what remains if there isn't a person here doing that? Well, what remains is the one substance of awareness, which is yourself. And in that awareness is all the qualities we are so desperately seeking out in the world. It's this ego that creates bondage and separation from the wholeness of ourself. And the moment you get a taste of that, like, oh wow, this has got some validity to it. I'm gonna keep questioning the ego, like keep looking behind the curtains until you realize this is the
Let
truth.
me ask you this. How long have you been studying non-duality, Eastern philosophy on these principles? And at what point did you really start making the switch to where in your daily life you are feeling more at peace, more whole, more happy than you have ever been based on learning who you are? What was this
Mhm.
process for you?
So that book was put in my lap about 9 years ago. Okay. I was seeking an understanding from wherever I could get, because I'm like, what's going on here? Like, I need some more information. Like, who's the authority on this? And so I sent off on a trek, on a search. I became a seeker. And it took me about 4 years to come into this message of Advaita Vedanta. At first, I was in a message known as Neo-Advaita, which is a very shallow understanding of this. It doesn't lead to the depths. It doesn't give you the answers to all the questions you have, and it doesn't bring in love. Advaita is about love. It's a story of falling back in love with yourself, and that came into play about 4 years ago now, where I was listening to a Rupert Spira video, and it wasn't the first time I encountered him. I'd encountered him several times prior, but I wasn't mature enough to hear what he was saying. I wasn't spiritually mature enough, but I must have been at that moment, and I heard it. He took me straight to myself, and I was like, oh, it's right here. I am it. I am is what I am seeking. And so this message of Advaita Vedanta just got deeper and deeper, not since I was on the correct path, which led me to India, which led me to the teachings of Ramana Maharshi and all of the Indian sages that have come out of India and their profound culture that I say has set me free. This book is meant to expedite what I just said, right? It's to try to take you there within a year or two, not
Right.
9. Because depending on our spiritual maturity, you're going to have to spend some time in the intellectual side of it, like coming in line with it, right? Like trusting it and being
Yes.
curious. And then you seem to reach a point to where you surrender into yourself through a practice known as self-inquiry. And once you do that, you could say it's over. Like you're done. The ego's days are numbered. Because once you turn your attention onto yourself, which is just pure peace and tranquility, you know that there's nothing out in the world that you can go find or get or attain that can ever deliver what yourself can.
Would you say you're at the state of your spiritual journey where there isn't much that can rock you or spin you or provoke a trauma response? Are you there? Are you resting every day in a sense of such peace and tranquility that regardless of your surroundings, you remain in that state? Is that where you're living these days, Scott? Wow.
Primarily, the answer is
Wow.
yes. And it's because I prioritize
Mm.
happiness. I prioritize contentment. And what does that mean? Where do I find that? How do I do that? And this is where it gets so simple. The mind says it can't be possible. The only task you're asked to do in this message is to turn your attention onto yourself and rest your attention there. That's it. And attention or yourself, you could say, cures the problem from the root out. Because the ego won't cure itself. It will play the game. It will morph into now the guy who's at peace with himself. See how
Yes,
slippery
it
it
is
is?
slippery.
It's totally slippery. So the only way to do that is the ego, which is another word for attention, because the ego is the one who thinks it's attending to everything. That when it turns around and sees where true happiness resides, it prefers to be here now instead of out there. And because of our conditioning, it can take It can take a while for that realization to happen.
Yes.
But anybody that does this is where the sages say we can all be saved. All 8 billion of us, because we know ourselves, can experience the love of totality, the love of awareness, the love of God, whatever words you want to put on that.
Through my spiritual journey, I've heard many people say that God is not external, it is an internal, and that we are basically beings of light, and the source of which is what we would call energy, God, universal source of
Mhm.
all, and that we are all pieces of this consciousness in this form to learn more about who and what we are in a way. What are
It
your
is.
what are your thoughts on that type of theory?
This goes right into the consciousness
Mm.
first model of
Well, let's
reality.
talk about that.
That because there's only one substance, there's only one, there's nothing dual about this, is that I'm going to come up with another hand puppet pair. This is consciousness, this is awareness, there's only one. And it's either in one or two states. It's either in the state of itself or an activity of itself. Okay, but again, you got to be real careful with words because there isn't two. There isn't consciousness that has pulled itself away and is active that can look back onto itself. No, this never detaches. So it's either in a formless state. I'm going to use the word state. It's formless, the unmanifest, or it's collapsed into its own activity of itself, which we could say that this is the form of the formless, but never becoming separate from itself. It never does this. It's only this. That is the consciousness first model of non-duality.
And at the end of the day, from what I understand, everything is conscious. Everything is conscious. From the plants, the animals, we're conscious. I've even heard people say that inanimate objects are conscious to a certain extent. Cars, material things that we would not think had any type of consciousness at all. I've heard other people say there is a level of consciousness even within that. What do you think about that?
So here's where we're getting to the total bottom of this. There are no things because the one substance of reality is unborn. It's unborn, therefore it never lived and it will never die. There's nothing that can stand outside of it. There's no thing, because to have a thing, it has to be relative to another thing, and now you've got duality. So it can't pull itself apart from itself because all it finds is more of itself. It can't stand outside of itself and look back to itself because there is no outside of itself. So at the core of this message, nothing exists.
Wow.
That's where it gets really
Really
deep.
hard to wrap your head around that. Really hard.
But that's what allows for a non-dual. This has to be the case for there to be
Yes.
non-duality.
Yeah.
And that's why nothing can be separate, right? That's where this comes back to the beauty of it, where it's proof that nothing is separate from anything else. there can't be separation. There's only
Yeah.
unity.
We are victims in a way to our own five senses. We can only interpret things based on our ability to see, touch, taste, smell them. Even with our eyesight, we're limited to a certain spectrum that we can see. There's things that are going on beyond our sense of being able to see that are real, that are out there, that are things that we can't visualize within our own ability, our own eyes. So I've always said, and I say it all the time, that there's so much more going on out there than what we are even able to interpret with our own senses. And it's getting into these concepts, it really is something that you need, I feel, and I'm going to um, take time to practice. You take time to sit and contemplate these questions such as who am I? Who is aware? What am I feeling? Looking within. It feels like it's not the easiest thing in the world to step into or grasp. Did you find your journey to be difficult to step into these concepts and hard to accept and grasp and initially at least find yourself? Because it seems difficult to find yourself.
Absolutely. It
Yeah.
freaked me out. That book freaked me out, the little blue book 9 years ago, because it said, you're not who
Yeah.
you think you are. And at the time, well, then who am I? Like, what am I? If I'm not this, does that mean I need to die somehow? It's weird. Like, because it was so new and it kind of came in so fast and I couldn't get the questions answered quick enough. Yeah, that's one of the primary roadblocks in
Yes.
this is this fear of the absence of individual, of a person who's going to do this life if I'm not here to do it. And the answer is the same thing that's been doing this life your entire life. It's been carrying you this whole life, and that's yourself. But yeah, the fear of the absence of
Yes.
person definitely is something that can't be overlooked. It needs to be addressed, and that's why I encourage the continual peeking behind the curtains just a little bit if you
Yeah.
need to see if this is true or not, in the hopes that you experience the joy that comes out of the dissolution
Yeah.
of the ego.
Plant medicine might be able to
Yeah,
help that because, it does kind of do an ego dissolve in a way, not in the same way I don't think as this process would be, but a
temporarily.
temporary dissolve of what you think
Yeah,
you are anyways.
yes. It does open you up to the
Yes.
possibility that this message has truth to
Agreed.
it.
Agreed.
Absolutely. But it in itself, it's another temporarily or a temporary vehicle of
Yeah.
of
It is.
peace.
It's not going to get you there. You're gonna have to do the work. It is a temporary state, and then 9 times out of 10, you go back to thinking, feeling, sailing exactly what you were feeling
Yep.
before you went on your journey. So, exactly.
That's
Yeah,
samsara,
exactly.
the ebbs and flows of happiness and
Yep.
unhappiness that we all just this is suffering in general. I mean,
Let's talk a little bit about some of the concepts or definitions in the book that you speak of. Like you talk about Ninyani. What is Ninyani in the book?
Brewer. A
Niani. What
Niani.
is that?
A
Niani.
Niani. Okay. So
Niani.
Niana, we start there, is one of the four yogas in the Vedic scriptures, right? So the Indians have four primary paths called yogas, and one of them is known as Jnana, which is pure knowledge. And what is pure knowledge? Yourself. awareness, is that pure knowledge. So when you know pure knowledge directly as yourself, you know nothing other than that. Okay? And in that one knowing, you know all, because it's in that one contains everything, because it's nothing, everything else is nothing but an activity of itself. So when you know the one awareness of yourself, you know all. This goes back to your question when you asked me, am I permanently content? A jnani is. A jnani is somebody who has permanent abidance in self. All they know is the infinite love of the one reality of their self. And nothing in the world can pull them away, because there isn't a world separate from them to pull them into anything. There's only the one love of themselves.
That is next level. Um,
I want it to be profound. I mean, I'm honestly, I love profound things. That's one of my discoveries in this. I'm like, I love really profound things. And the most profound piece of knowledge that I've ever encountered is that I am, is that truth of profoundness. That I am, and you are, your I am, my I am, all 8 billion of our I ams are that one
Yeah.
truth.
That is fascinating. So let me, we also in the book, you talk about the neti and the self-inquiry process. Well, can you talk to us a little bit about the steps in which we get to where you are in life? We all want to be where Scott is in life. Let's just face it. We do.
Well, I mean, you are. That's the thing. This message isn't anything new. It's not, you're not learning anything new. You're remembering what you've always been.
That's great. Yeah.
Right? The ego thinks it's something new. It's out wanting to get a new philosophy, a new religion, a new take on life. No, there's nothing new here. That's the good news of the day. That's the gospel of the day, that you are this as well. So neti is, it's Sanskrit for not this, not this. Okay. What it is, it's an elimination practice of everything that you are not. Because the mind cannot know the self. So the finite mind can never know the infinite self directly. But what the finite mind can know is what the self is not. Okay, so, back to what you were saying earlier about, I'm not a sister, or I'm not a daughter. These identities, okay, you're starting to chip away at the falseness of yourself, which reveals the truth of yourself. So it's a practice or an understanding before you literally turn within to see who you actually are. And so this neti process, let me give you an example.
Okay.
Okay. Is a thought aware of itself, or are you aware of a thought? Can a thought sit on a table and be aware of itself? Or is it you that's aware of that thought?
I would be aware of that thought.
Yeah. What this is showing you, that is, you are not your thoughts. You are that which is aware of your thoughts.
Yes.
Okay? You're starting to separate yourself from the belief that I am these thoughts in this mind.
Yeah.
You can now do that with images. Is an image aware of itself?
No.
Or are you aware of that image?
I am aware.
You're the
Yeah.
awareness. Okay. Memories, ideas, anything mind driven is not aware of itself. It's you who are aware of them. So these now become objects within your awareness. They're not you. You're not an object. You are the awareness that's aware of the objects. So in general, is a mind aware of itself? Can your mind sit on a table and be aware of itself, or are you aware of your
I
mind?
am aware of my mind.
That's right. You are not your mind.
I mean, like, it's like,
Yep.
and
Okay, now let's keep going
all
with
right.
this a little bit. Let's do this with emotions,
Mm.
feelings, sensations are all objects that are not aware of themselves. You are aware of them, which leads to the body. A body is not aware of itself. It's inert. It's you who are aware of your body.
When
So you're not your mind or your
you are
body.
that which you are is aware of your mind and your body.
Yes.
You got it.
Yes.
I think I'm starting to wrap my head a little bit around this information. It is profound. It is deep. It's hard to discern between your ego and your inner true awareness, consciousness, energy. It is
Mhm.
a fascinating. I am definitely glad that I read your book. I am I am going to march in this direction. I am because I do feel that it is going to give me, I've everybody has trauma. I certainly am dealing with trauma in my life. I'm certainly starting to understand when you started saying you are not your feelings or your sensations or your thoughts.
Mhm.
Those are big things to start really acknowledging is that you are aware
Yes.
of your emotions. Because I do feel like we get so led by our emotions instead of feeling them, realizing what they are, that you are not them, that you don't have to maybe entertain every single emotion. Maybe you don't have to entertain every single sensation. You are aware of them, but it doesn't mean you need to um, react, maybe.
Yes. I mean, what you were just introduced to there, you were just introduced to yourself.
That like gave me
You're the awareness. And when you smile, like I can tell when people tap in because they smile because you are the love you seek. And when you turn your attention onto who you actually are, there's a release, a release.
it's definitely a gift.
And it's you just came home to yourself. Like you can't forget this. This is direct knowledge that you can't forget. This is part of the profoundness of this message is that we only we only are interested in that which can be experienced directly, which you just
Yeah.
did.
Wow.
And if you turn to that awareness, we didn't talk about the qualities of the
Well,
awareness, right? Awareness, when you turn your attention there, is this boundless space of freedom, right? You become free. The body becomes free because the body follows the mind. When this says that there's problems, this tenses up
yeah.
or loosens up depending on what this does. This is saying that the mind is basically dissolving, which then dissolves all of the tension within the body. And what does that? Knowing ourselves. We're like, all I have to do is continue to turn my attention here. and it will take care of the mind and the body.
That's a revelation, ladies and gentlemen. That is, right? That is a revelation. You should, have you ever thought about teaching a class on this?
Well, I do give, free one-on-one sessions to where I meet people where they are. So some people are just getting started, and depending on where we are, I don't rush them into anything. And then some people are already, in self-inquiry and want pointers, you could say. So I try to meet people where they are. But because of you and who you are and what you do, I wanted to take you there to yourself during this so that you can experience that right here and now.
Yeah. I mean, it's, it's definitely next level feeling of excitement in a way.
Mhm.
Um, awe.
Ah,
You mentioned the awes in the book. Let's talk a little bit about that. I know we're coming up in an hour,
mhm.
but let's dabble a little bit more down this road.
Yeah.
Um, you talk about a sense of awe that can help us bring us to that space to where we get a sense of our true nature.
Mhm.
Why don't we talk a little bit about that? What can you tell us about that sense of awe?
Yeah, it seems like some of the earlier knowledge about this is utilizing our kind of day-to-day understanding to break our mind open, right? So awe is actually an emotion that rarely gets talked about. Um, Awe is when you encounter something that your mind is it it's too limited to take in that knowledge. And so there's like a gap between what it knows and the new information, you could say. And it takes time for your mind to catch up before it starts to comprehend and get, oh, I get that. And in that space, you could say, is this awe. You're, like looking into the Grand Canyon or deep space or, being on an amusement ride where the bottom drops out and you're falling,
Yeah, yeah.
right? It's a state of profoundness. And it's just, you could say it's a consciousness expander.
And I mean, it's depending on what you're looking at and what you're doing, but sometimes awe is a sense that is so fleeting. It's like sometimes it's there and gone
Mhm,
um,
mhm.
uh, before you can really kind of feel it almost, like you can really kind of acknowledge it. It's like it's there and you feel this sense that, because awe is not something we as humans feel very often. It has to be a special
Right.
moment, a something that is outside of our normal experience that it hits us and it's gone before we can even taste it, it almost feels like.
And the greatest experience of awe is when you turn your attention in and know
Yeah.
yourself. That yourself is awe. Awe is experienced when you touch and know yourself and come home to yourself. That's why, a lot of the great masters, or even, Einstein was saying things like, it's a childlike wonder, right? It's in that childlike wonder where this awe, this flowing imagination comes through
Yeah.
you. It's childlike. It's awe. You are awe. You are profoundness itself.
I so love this entire conversation. I think it's so important and I hope it touches as many people as possible. I really do. Is if people are looking to step into this sense of getting to know what we are, who you are, self-inquiry, all of that. It is I think it does have to be a practice. I know I'm going to be thinking about it on a daily to try because it's fleeting. Even that moment of me experiencing it,
Mhm.
it's I feel like it's escaped me already. If that makes sense. Um,
Yes.
what do you feel like is the biggest roadblock to people experiencing this more often? What is the best advice you can
Yeah.
give somebody if they are looking to be like Scott Flynn?
We touched on one of them. One of the roadblocks is the fear of not knowing who you'd be if you let yourself go, your egoic self, your identities. But I say the biggest one is self-doubt. That's self with the capital S. The belief that this cannot possibly be the truth. That I am isn't the truth. Like I am not it. And it has to do with our conditioning. Our conditioning runs so deep for so many generations that has moved us away from this, that hacking through the jungle to get back there might take a little bit, but it's there. It is the truth. When we sit quietly with ourselves and be honest with ourselves, we know that this knowing, this calling from within, this whisper is there. And it's following that tether back home to see the truth that you are the truth. And so the number one roadblock is self-doubt.
I can see where that would be a huge, even within my own being of, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
because it's so simple. It's prior to simple. It's prior to your mind. That exercise we just went through. You are awareness. Awareness is prior to everything that you know. That's why it's so simple. And then you only have one task, to turn your attention within and know the one of yourself. So there's only one. There's literally never a second thing or experience going on here.
I mean, on that note, Scott, that is a lot. This was a lot, ladies and gentlemen. This was a lot. I encourage everyone to go pick up Love Outpouring. It will crack open that brain of yours and make you think and really bring a new sense of everything, really.
Yes,
Yes.
peace. It's the only
Yes.
thing.
I mean, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show and speaking with me today and allowing me to momentarily even acknowledging and understanding the sense of self of I that lies within that is not involved with my egoic mind.
It's prior
Yeah.
to it.
Yeah. I mean, it is just really exciting. I'm going to March 4th. I'm on my own spiritual journey here. And part of the reason why I started this podcast was to learn everything I could about who we are, the nature of reality, what happens to us when we die. How can I be more at peace and have a sense of myself more while I am in this form, in this 3D plane that we live in. And this
Mhm.
is one of these episodes that was really another bridge to a new journey, really. So
Mhm.
thank you, Scott Flynn, for
Thank you,
being
Christy.
a part of the show. Um, where can people pick up your book?
So Amazon and Barnes and Nobles, all the typical
Okay.
places. They can find me online. My website is
Oh, great.
loveoutpouring.com. My YouTube channel is at Love
Oh, great.
Outpouring. So I keep it
So,
simple.
if people wanted to reach out to you for tips and for insight into how to seek their own eternal happiness and bliss, they can reach out to you to your website for that help. And
Yes.
in your YouTube channel, do you just do like clips of like what could people find on your YouTube channel that would assist them in this journey?
Yeah. I have a knack for being able to put this in like verbal
Mm.
diagrams for you to see what's going on. So I've got a lot of like phase by phase stuff or step by step. Plus I've got, different playlists on there like self-inquiry, surrender, start here, what is self, what is ego. So I am describing in words and diagrams what we just spent an hour talking about, which helped you understand quicker. My goal is to expedite your happiness.
I love expediting the happiness. Everybody should be doing that. Well, I will put all of that in the show notes. And like I said, gang, pick up that book. It will open up you to experiencing life in a different way completely. And peace and happiness is the goal always.
Yes.
With
Yes.
that, gang, thank you so much, Scott Flynn, for the conversation. I am honored that you came to join me today. I will put all of it in the show notes. And ladies and gentlemen, that is a wrap on this episode of Fate, from Atheism to Enlightenment. And we'll see you next week on the show. Thanks, everybody. Bye, Scott.
Bye.
And that is a wrap on this episode of From Atheism to Enlightenment. I hope you enjoyed this one. It was one for the books. I mean, pretty hard concepts to wrap your head around for sure. And this is, I don't know, I felt like these are concepts and teachings that you have to put some work and effort in. It is not going to come to you easily. But hey, true peace and happiness, who said it was going to be easy, folks? I mean, we're all searching for more happiness, more peace, more calm, a better sense of well being. And if this is the path to it, then journey on, my friends. Like, let's go. I am going to put these practices into my own life. I'm going to do it in baby steps because it is it is a lot to take on as far as the change within that's going to have to occur. And you kind of have to change the entire way in which you see yourself that you've been swimming in for however long you've been here. So it's I don't think it's entirely easy to get into this space of eternal bliss and happiness and separating the ego from the self and understanding that we are not the doer, that we are not our ego, that we are a energy, a consciousness, and awareness that lies within, and that you need to turn yourself inward and rest in that knowingness that you are a one consciousness reality, that we are all one. I mean, pretty deep stuff. I didn't get to ask him about his own religious background, if he had any, but I would have been curious to see what Scott would have had to have said about organized religion, uh, our concept of what mainstream thinks of what God is. We didn't really go there, but maybe he'll come back on the show. You never know. He was an interesting person to talk to. I will definitely look him up on YouTube and seek out his videos. And even after the show, when we're waiting for the download, he was like, "Call me, reach out to me. I'll give you some tips." And pick up his book, Love Outpouring, Experiencing Ever Present Happiness and Illuminating and Eliminating the difference between who you are and what you mistake yourself to be. That's a big, long title, but there is a lot packed in that book. Like I said in the show, had to reread a lot of the concepts to get a clear understanding of what he was trying to convey, because it is a lot of yourself as is yourself, and almost it's not an easy read. It's something you actually have to think about as you are reading, or you're going to miss out on the lesson it's trying to teach you. So if this resonates with you, if this episode is something that you're saying, "Hmm, this sounds like something that um could bring me joy or peace or bliss," which it will. I will definitely keep you posted on my journey into non-dualism. Um a part of me fears that change of letting go of my ego 24/7, because you're comfortable. You love your ego. Everybody, to a certain extent, you definitely have a sense of self that is not your true self, the self that we're all clinging to for all the answers, for all the insights, for all the doing, for all the thinking, is not who our inner being truly is. And it is a scary prospect to let go and solely swim within that peace and bliss of just conscious awareness. And that's why I'm going to do it with baby steps. A little bit here. Let's, ask yourself the question, who am I? Who am I? Who is thinking this? Who is feeling this? Am I aware of my own thoughts, my own feelings? It's a profoundly um, inspirational situation that we're going to find ourselves in. I will keep you posted. On that note, guys, I'm going to leave Scott's information in the show notes, and pick up his book if it resonates with you. It's something that is speaking to you. I really encourage you to dance in this direction. It can only bring you peace. And we all need a little peace and happiness in our lives these days, for sure. Um, if you're liking the show and you're liking what I'm talking about, do me a favor, like, subscribe, share, tell a friend. I need all the help I can get. I would love to take as many people as possible on this journey with me. I have been feeling inspired today by this conversation. I hope it has inspired someone out there in the world to get on their own path and to seek their own sense of well-being, peace, and happiness. And that's all you can do in the world. Um, with that, gang, thank you for listening, watching, supporting. And we will see you next week on From Atheism to Enlightenment. And welcome to your fate, gang. I'll see you next week. Bye.